A morning before dusk had fallen, I saw the brass lighter, still warm, lying in the middle of the yard. 5 people stepped into the same story that needed no witness. Ruth rasped, "Quick now!" Calder stood still. Ward folded his arms. Briggs carried the smell of debt. Boyd held silence. From the hiss of that tiny lid, the whole town had to choose a side. I saw it before I heard the hard breath inside the horse stall. A small thing, warm, lying quietly on the dirt still damp with dew. An old brass lighter, lid half open, striker mute, the faint metal smell in the wind. Boyd bent down, his boy's finger brushed it. He lifted it as if holding a bird just freed from a trap. He did not spark it, only kept it in his palm, his eyes dark as a well. The porch still carried the damp of night. The third plank warped at one corner, ready to pop its nails. Calder's mare snorted, sent white breath through the slats, ears tilted toward the yard. Somewhere, the hinge of an old door creaked, speaking on its own to the change of heat. No one spoke. I leaned against the porch post, my hand sticky with resin from yesterday, not wiped. She burst into the yard as if thrown, hem of her torn dress dragging dust into a thick streak, hair tangled down her neck, stuck with sweat, her mouth raw like she had swallowed sand. Quick now, she said it to the ground or to herself. I did not know. Her eyes met no one, only the unsettled dust, as if measuring the distance between life and death in grains of dirt. Calder stood on the porch, thin, shoulder bones sharp under a faded dark shirt. He did not greet, did not ask, his chin like a stone worn down. Behind him, Deputy Ward stood still, hands clasped at his belly, his gun belt clean to the point of cold. Ward did not draw, only crossed his arms like a passenger waiting at a depot, but his eyes waited for nothing. "Door," Calder said. One word, slid past his teeth, dry as bark. He did not jerk his chin, did not point. He only let the word move through the air and drop on the wooden step. Ruth looked as if hearing command from the ground. She stepped halfway, faltered, her hand clutching the torn seam of her dress. Her face snapped toward the outer gate, where the road slipped past the cactus line. The wind carried no new dust, no hooves, only the absence of sound, like wet cloth laid over the yard. Boyd moved forward, held out what he had, his hand turned upward, the lighter there like a creek fish still glistening, brass dim, silent. "What's happened to you?" Ruth did not answer. She swallowed as if swallowing gravel. "Quick now," she repeated. Her eyes stopped at Calder's hand, resting light on the door bar not yet closed. Across his knuckle, a white mark, old, like a rope, had once bit there. Calder watched his hand one beat longer than usual. Then he pushed the door. The hinge groaned again, this time with direction, the room dark as Root Hollow. "In," he said, still one word. Wind slid through the straw wall gaps, carrying the dry stench of old manure. I stepped half a pace further, enough to see Ruth's heels. Dirt clung to her ankles like ash. She paused exactly one breath, then stepped. She did not look back. I saw the hem brush the threshold, leaving a thin arc of dust like a question mark. Boyd stayed where he was, his hand dropping slow. The lighter slipped into the pocket of his old shirt like a secret swallowed into a cave mouth. Ward shifted, but did not enter. He lingered, his eyes set on the latch as if on a hidden gun barrel. "I have no warrant," he said, half to me, half to the sky. "And the sky signs nothing," Calder turned his head to Ward. Not long. A look no different than the one set on clouds before drought. He closed the door with his palm. Wood struck wood. No bolt. Not yet. Inside, light fell in a thin cord through a roof hole. Dust floated each mote, a fish in murky water. Ruth leaned against the wall, shoulder to a coat hook. The hook bent like a cow's horn, old enough the skin felt no metal. She looked down at her shoes. They did not match, one high top, one low. Bound with plaited rope, each twist another sleepless day. "What do you want?" she asked very low, her voice raw not from night, but the days before night. Calder leaned his hip on the tabletop scarred with long cuts, deep from an old butcher's knife. He laid his finger in the grooves as if naming the marks of time. "A name to fix," he said. "For peace." He said peace, as one says stop the rain. Not a promise, only a want for dryness. Ruth laughed without sound. Her lip bent like a bullet that missed the heart. "Your name?" she asked. "On me?" Calder did not nod, did not shake. He turned his face aside, to the wall where a nail hole remained. Maybe once a photo hung, now empty. "Let them pass," he said. "They will not tear my house if you stand under my name." A sentence split in 2 slices, each slice thin. On the porch, Boyd pressed his forehead to the post. He heard the dipper strike the bucket somewhere in the backyard. One pull through the door gap. No push, no threat. The question dropped into the dark, like a stone into a well, with no echo back. "No one," Ruth said. She lied by looking straight, her eyes fixed on the space between sentences. "I only want... quick now." The word quick stabbed the air, then dulled itself. Calder opened the drawer, took out a strip of leather. Not new. Brown, gone black at the middle. He set it on the table, did not look at Ruth. "You can throw it away tomorrow," he said, "if you find no need." He spoke as if of a spare nail, but his hand lay nearer the strip than usual. Ruth touched the edge of it with her finger, her palm damp, skin seeping into skin. "I promise nothing to you," she said, "and you promise nothing to me." An agreement without words. Outside, a crow flew low. Its shadow sliced the roof light in one beat. Boyd tilted his face. His eyes followed the crow's shadow until it slipped past the fence and vanished behind the mound. At the fence line, an empty nail can rolled soft, stopped against a thicker stalk of dry grass. Ward laid his hand on the holster, then withdrew at once, as if to check his hand still there. He smoothed the rim of his hat, spoke a line needing no answer. "Eat's coming." He stepped back from the door, watched the yard as if it were a chessboard laid out but waiting no first move. I wiped my hand on my pants. Resin stuck like a word that would not pull back. I looked through the door gap. Inside, Calder looped the leather strip into a ring. Did not tighten, only left it on the table, laid there like a second shadow for Ruth. She touched it no more. She leaned her hip to the chair edge, breathed through teeth. Long. I heard the air against enamel, like wind on wire. "Do you want water?" I asked, not thought before. The word was out before I knew. Ruth did not look at me. "No," she said, but her tongue brushed the corner of her dry lip, by reflex. I went into the kitchen, dipped half a dipper, set it down. She did not lift it. Calder neither. The dipper lay there, surface flat, like a shut-eye. Ward snorted, small, then laughed light, as if answering a joke no one told. "I'm here like the postman," he said. But every eyes read the letter already. He looked toward the far road. No dust. It made his brow tighten. "Asked," Ward said. "I'm here for the sun." He put on his hat again, brim lowered. Sweat gathered at his hairline. Not much. He stepped off the porch, took a short round, counted his heels striking the cracked soil. 1, 2, 3. He stopped at the 4th. There lay an old wheel rut. He bent, touched. Dust clung to his fingertip in a gray line, like leaf ash. Inside, Calder spoke, as through a plank of wood. "Stay." Another one word. Not like plea, not like threat, like laying a log across the front door before sleep. Ruth did not nod, did not shake. She turned her eyes through the small window toward the yard. Boyd. The boy stood straighter, his hand pressed to his pocket. His face lit by dust, not sun. She looked longer, then at the dipper on the table. "Put a name on me," she said, her voice like a bruise. "But I don't belong to that name." Calder gave one small nod. "I know." He reached, pulled a chair near the door, set it on its side for no one to sit, as if halting an interrogation before it could start. Ward saw the move, the corner of his mouth shifted near a smile. A sound far off, not hooves, not wheels, like something heavy dropping on soft ground beyond the sun line. We all held breath one beat. Wind turned, carried a rusted, iron smell. I looked at Ward. He had already fixed on the road. He did not move. Only his neck taut like a drawn bowstring. Calder did not step out. He laid his hand on the door edge, fingers cracked dry. He looked at me. I understood something wordless. Keep still. Hold quiet. Inside my chest, heart struck like a hammer at a forge without fire. Ruth clutched the table edge. Her knuckles went white, then back to skin. Boyd pressed his palm to his pocket once more, pushed light, checked the presence of the warm thing. His eyes stuck to the horizon. At his feet, an ant dragged a shell scrap larger than itself. Straight path. Unaware, someone waited somewhere else. "Quick now," Ruth said to herself, third time, low enough to be breath. No one answered. The sky stood still like an upturned bowl. On the porch, Ward lifted his head, blinked slow. "Yes," he said, to his own shadow. "Quick or slow, it comes." Calder shut the door another half. Light shrank to a thin strip on the floor. I heard dust fall from the straw ceiling, each grain a dry rain. Sweat smell, wood smell, old dawn smell. All laid on one voice. Waiting. The door opened. Calder stepped back one pace, just enough for Ruth's body to slip through. He did not yield fully, did not offer like a gentleman in books. The door brushed her sleeve, scraped fabric faint. I stood near, caught the smell of dust blown from the edge of the frame, like damp bran. "In," he said. His voice like tossing a small stone into a deep well, not waiting for echo. Ruth stepped halfway, then stopped. Her hand still gripped the torn hem of her dress, fingernails packed with sand. Her gaze passed over me as it would a post. No hold. She breathed thin, enough to lift her chest a half-finger, then let it sink. Calder turned his back, reached to close the door. The two hinges cried different, one old, one young. Wood pressed to wood. He did not bolt it. His hand rested on the latch mouth, stopped there, like a man of habit who today wished to forget. "Stay," he said. "If you stay, you must bear my name." Each word dropped to the floor, slow as ash. I looked at his boots. Soles evenly worn, laces old, one loose at the top hole. He did not look at Ruth when he said it. His eyes set on the table's edge, where a crack ran long like a dry creek. On the porch, Ward smiled half a mouth. No sound. Only one corner lifted, then stopped, as if he remembered the sun. He pulled his brim lower, tilted his head so the shadow covered his eyes. His hands locked before his belly. Holster clean, snap bright. "Your name," Ruth said, dry. "What use to put it on me?" Calder lifted the chair beside the table, turned it square to the door, set it down light, as if not to wake a child. "So they pass by," he said. "Under my name, this house is less likely overturned." Ruth laughed, not full, like a knife skidding on bark, shaving off a thin splinter. "Less, not none." Calder did not answer. He placed a leather ledger on the table, old, the spine cracked. He did not open it. He stood straight, hand pressed on the cover. Only that. From the yard came some clash, iron to wood, wood to wood. The rooster on the rafter startled, flapped, dropped dust like dry rain. I tilted my head. Ward did not turn, but his eyes slid side. He heard clearer than I. A low trail of dust crept into the yard like a timid beast. 3 shadows followed the fence, then straight to the porch as to a familiar saloon. Spurs beat wood. First came Briggs, big man, short neck, dark coat, wet at the pits. He did not look at anyone first. He looked at his own shadow cast on the house door. His shadow larger than himself by half. Perhaps he liked it so. "Lookin' for someone," Briggs said. He shoved his hat back, forehead dry. "The woman owes her husband's debt." Calder stood half an arm's length from the table. Ruth pressed against the wall, left hand clutching dress, right hand hanging. Her eyes went straight to Briggs's face, then slid past as over hot stone. He grinned. A gold tooth in the upper row caught light. "Have come for debt, widow," Briggs said. "Jonathan's debt. He owed. You pay." Ruth gave no word. She looked at Ward. Through the gap, only his shadow's edge. He did not step in, did not step back. His thumb touched the belt snap, left it. Once. "I have no writ," Ward said, still outside. "No one's name is written here." Briggs laughed bigger, mixed with breath. He yanked a chair by the table with one hand. It scraped. He drew from under his coat a small sack, rough, and threw it on the table. It landed on the crack running long. Dust inside hissed through its seam like wind in a slit. "Earth," Briggs said. "For now we pay in earth. After that in flesh." He kicked the chair with his boot. It toppled, legs struck the floor, clacked like dry bone on stone. Calder looked at the sack of earth as at a stray carcass. Did not move. He let no word drop. Ruth shut her eyes a breath. When she opened, they were drier. "I have nothing," she said, "except my name." She spoke slow, counted each word as grains of sand in her palm. Briggs frowned, then smiled as one recalling an oft-told joke. "Name? Names can change." He turned to Calder. Calder's face did not shift. "Wall," he said, "and roof. You choose one to lean, one to cover." Briggs blinked, one beat. Whether he failed to understand or pretended not, I did not know. He pinched a bit of earth from the sack, let it fall. The grain spread on the table, slipped into the crack, vanished. At the doorway, Boyd pressed his back to the post, his neck tilted back as if to hear clearer. His hand sat in his pocket, the warm thing still. He did not look inside. He watched the shadows sliding on the ground, measuring which lay longest. Ward cleared his throat. "Briggs," he said, "don't raise noise. The sun's still climbing." "You here for show, deputy?" Briggs asked, lazy. "Or here to count bodies home?" Ward's mouth pulled again, half-smile, like a tear left unstitched. "I count the sun," he said. Ruth looked at Ward once more. Appeal? No, only seeking a boundary. He answered with a nod near unseen, as if saying, "The line is there, but I drive no stake." "I will not leave," Ruth said, turning back to Briggs. "I have no place left to go." "Then good," Briggs said. "Me blood," Briggs said, voice thick. "But I didn't come for blood today. I came for money." Calder lifted his head for the first time since Briggs had entered. His eyes locked on the man's. Not the same height, but the same line. "The dead's money needs no counting," he said, his voice not loud. The sentence dropped on the floor and stayed, did not roll. No one laughed, not even Briggs for a second. Then he squinted, as if someone had tossed grit in his eye. "Who you sayin'?" he asked, slow. Ruth drew breath. Her chest held at the dress back like a fish hitting net. I heard her tongue touch teeth, dry. Ward shifted stance, weight to his left leg, small. But dust beneath his boot sole slid, left a faint leaf shape. He lifted his eyes to the rafters, watched a spider move between two threads. It went across, not down. Briggs moved around the table, stood closer to Ruth, his coat sour. He raised his hand, did not touch, but near. Ruth did not step back. Her eyes passed through his shoulder to the door, where a strip of light ran on the floor like a shrinking creek. She spoke one line, small as ash. "Don't touch." He touched the chair instead. The chair scraped the floor, shrieked thin. "You've got no law here," he said. "Only sun and me." Calder slid half a step. His hand rested on the table edge, near Ruth. Did not touch her. The space between two hands enough for a fly. He said, "Don't." Briggs glanced down at Calder's hand. "You forbid me?" He grinned, gold tooth flashing like a pin. "What have you to forbid?" Calder did not answer at once. He turned his face toward the door. I saw the cord in his neck rise like a string drawn light. He lifted his hand from the table. For a second I thought he would step back. He always had. Years passed. In the days of other men, other hooves, graves without names. But he did not. He stepped forward half. His hand reached, took Ruth's wrist, not tight, only placed, drew her upright at his side so their shoulders met, so their breaths touched the same air. A move so small the dust did not stir, but the whole room shifted. Ruth looked slant, not surprised, not glad, only closed her eyes a beat, like one on a wooden bridge hearing water change below. Her mouth opened and shut, no word. Briggs laughed. The laugh shattered, bounced the rafters, fell like gravel. "Ah," he said. "So you don't step back now." He glanced at Ward. "Deputy, write in your book. This is the time a man claims new debt." Ruth's wrist. Not tight. not loose. Skin warmth ran from the touch into the words just spoken, made the words more true. He turned his face back to Briggs, his lips closed, eyes fixed. No room for back on the wood floor. The line drawn, in dust, by a hand on a hand. In that silence, the sack of earth sank itself a millimeter. Grains slid further into the crack, gone. A fly landed on the rim, rubbed its legs. Outside, a cloud covered the sun for a breath, then left. No one spoke. No need. The wind circled the small room, waiting for another sound. Not yet. But the path had bent since Calder drew her to him, and where each stood from then was changed. The stall dark as the mouth of a jar. The smell of damp straw mixed rusted iron, the mare's sweat. A rein hung on a nail, its end dropped straight as a stiff blade of grass. I entered last. My hand slid the heavy door. Its splintered edge burned my fingerskin. Door near closed. A line of light cut the dirt floor, split the shadows of Calder and Ruth. Boyd was already there. He crouched behind the trough, knees to ground, back pressed to the wall. His head low, both hands clutching what was hid in his shirt pocket. I knew it because this morning I'd seen it warm on the earth. The old brass lighter, lid ajar, striker mute. Boyd did not strike. He held it like the last warmth of night. Briggs stepped into the middle of the aisle. His boots sank half an inch in straw dust. His shoulder brushed a post, left a dry clack like a beak on iron. He asked no one where to stand. He set himself in the center, as if someone had laid the spot for him long before. On his right hand, the knuckles bore white scars. His eyes swept once, stopped where Ruth stood. "Still runnin'?" Briggs said. His voice not loud. It went straight, like a blade sliding through dry grass. "Or stand there and be done?" Ruth did not answer. She drew her back straight, as if pulled by an unseen string. Her hand gripped her dress hem, nails packed with earth, black lines at the cuticles. Her heart beat. I saw it under the thin cloth, uneven. Calder stood angled in front of Ruth. He set half a heel on the crossbar. His body leaned as one ready to push a door. His hand hung down. He did not draw. His eyes fixed above Briggs's head, as if on a void steady so as not to meet his. His hand clutched deeper into his shirt pocket. I heard the lighter's lid scrape his fingernail. A sound small, but enough to know it was there among all else. "Briggs," Calder said. He did not call the name like an acquaintance. He spoke it like a line carved in stone. "Leave her." "Leave?" Briggs echoed. "Who do you leave easy here?" He leaned toward Ruth. Distance shrank. A wisp of straw caught in his cuff, fell, clung to her shoe. Ruth did not step back. She lifted her chin, slight, enough to draw one thin line in her throat. Ward pressed the door with his back, let in a thinner strip of light. He did not step closer. "Keep muzzle," he said, words to no one. "Ground hot, fire near." Briggs curled his lip. "Deputy, stand out there countin' sun if you like. In here, debts tallied." He shifted weight. His right hand plunged into the shadow of his coat. I heard cloth billow. A steel tube glinted half a breath, gone in shadow. At once a gunshot split the air, the first, sharp, sudden enough to slice breath in two. The mare jerked its neck, slammed the slaths. Straw burst in a fine rain, the smell of powder thick as storm. I did not see the bullet's path. Only a splintered post, the shard whipped past my cheek. My skin burned. I heard Ruth suck air hard through her teeth. Boyd froze stiff as wet timber. "Drop," Ward said. One word. None dropped. Briggs lowered his arm, stepped back half, searching angle. His shadow swung with the light strip on the floor. I saw the shadow, not him. Calder did not move. His hand reached behind, not turning, as if he knew whose hand would be there. That hand met his, Boyd's. Boyd's fingers opened by reflex. The brass lighter slid into Calder's palm. The lid rasped his skin, a thin, dry scrape. I heard it clear, like an old knife opening a tin. Calder gripped it as he would warm soil. He did not look down. He raised it slight, rib high, and struck. The lid rasped dry. Flame flared, small, yellow, trembling like an eye opening at night. Fire licked Calder's cheek, lit his eyes red, not from drink, from flame caught in the pupil. For one slice of time, I saw everything clear as noon. Dust hanging like fog, Briggs's gun muzzle flaring a thin glint, Ruth's mouth parted, lips cracked, one bead of sweat down her neck, and Ward's hand half-stalled on his belt. The second shot broke in the middle of that instant. I did not know whose finger closed first. The sound hammered bone, ricocheted through my teeth. The mare thrashed, rain screeched on nail. The lighter's flame wavered, near dying, then steadied. Briggs' buff flame still burned. The fire shone in his eyes. His eyes did not blink. His breath shoved one rib, lifted his shirt, then dropped. I saw his wrist tremble, light, the tremor of one holding rope, till numb. Ruth stepped forward. She stood before, did not run, did not look at Briggs. She looked at the flame. Her lids lowered, lifted, as if weighing it with sight. "Enough," she said low, not to anyone, to the fire. Briggs dropped. His shoulders struck the floor, straw burst like thrown flour. The gun in his hand, if it was gun, slid a ways, vanished in the shadow between posts. I saw it no more. I only heard one weak clink of metal against wood, then silence. Silence long enough for me to count 3 heartbeats of my own. Ward looked at Calder, his eyes cold, not cold like water, cold like a stone long under the wall's shadow. He did not scold, did not ask. He set his hand back on the belt, light as laying a moth on a leaf. "See," he said, voice level as ground. "Dark makes hands stray." "Not stray," Calder answered, his eyes fixed on nothing I could find. Maybe he looked through the flame, to some place before. Maybe he looked at his own hand. Boyd dared not breathe. He edged his head, enough to glimpse the sole of Briggs's boot, turned up, mud in the grooves. On his cheek lay a new streak of dust. He swallowed. His throat creaked faint like an old bucket's crank. His eyes stuck to the brass face. The red marks there, not ink. Ruth lifted her hand, palm open. She said nothing, no request, only made a place for the thing to lie. Calder looked at that hand. His fingers clenched the lighter harder, as if each vein weighed. The flame still burned, the wick tip black at the rim, a cold fire smell mixed with damp straw. "Pass it," Ward said low, not clear to whom, maybe to time, maybe to them both. Calder exhaled, long. I heard it scrape his teeth a bit. He reached. The gap between his hand and Ruth's shortened with each flicker of flame. Each flicker shifted their faces, yellow, then dark, then yellow again. He set the lighter in her palm. The choke was there. No one spoke. Ruth's hand closed. Her thumb touched the lid's edge, the lid hot. She did not flinch. Her eyes met his for one beat. In hers was no question, oh pardon. only the recognition of one who had seen the last thing left to share. The flame flared on her face, lit a crack at her lip. Blood dried quick. The red dots on brass stayed still as millet pressed in skin. She turned her wrist, kept flame off her dress hem. She stood blocking wind from the wall slats, a small act, but enough to show her side. "Enough," Ward said at last. He shoved the door, Boyd's eyes wide. He raised his hands, as if to take part in some rite never taught him. Ruth did not give. She kept. But she lowered the flame, below his sightline, so he could see the brass face, the red dots. He looked, long, then nodded slow, a nod so small the wind would not notice. Calder stepped half back. His hand left Ruth's wrist, left a cold streak on her skin. He bent, lifted his hat fallen when I had not seen. He brushed straw from the brim, straw clung back. He brushed no more. Briggs lay still. A fly landed on his ear rim, rubbed its legs, flew, returned. The mare's breathing evened. Outside the door, Ward leaned to the road. No hooves, no dust. The air sounded like a sealed drum. "Calder," Ward called, eyes still on the door. "You want to say anything?" "No," Calder said. "Wouldn't matter," Ward replied, voice flat. "They listen to other things." Ruth shut the lid. The click, small but rang. The flame died. A thin smoke line rose fast, then gone. The brass face dark again, still marked. She slid the lighter into her pocket, slow, as if placing a warm stone into soil, leaving half its face for memory. Boyd exhaled for the first time in many beats. He set his forehead to the trough edge. The damp of old wood pressed his skin. His hand went to his own pocket, now empty. His fingers pinched air, then dropped. I looked at Calder's hand. It still shook. Not much, but shook like a cord too long stretched. Slack now, yet remembering taut. He did not look at Ruth. He did not look at Briggs. He looked at the wall, where a thin blade mark ran crosswise, likely from some sharpening in a past season. The mark lay still. Yet I saw in his eyes, it moved. Ward lifted his brim. "Way out," he said, like reciting a step after ritual. None went. The wind came through the door, ran my sleeve, colder than before. The sun high still, maybe, but here the light would not enter. It stood outside like a man unwilling to witness. No one spoke of the gun. No one bent to see if Briggs still breathed. Not from cruelty, because each now held something heavier than a gun. Ruth held the old brass lighter, blood on it. Calder held his empty hand. Ward held the cold gaze. Boyd held only bent to pick up his hat, brushed once, set it on. Ruth stood at an angle behind him, her face without expression, her mouth pressed shut. She raised her left hand to her chest, held something small inside. I knew what. Metal through cloth pressed cold into her palm, cold but with one pocket of warmth trapped like cinders in a stove. In the yard, 2 men bound the stretcher with rope, laid Briggs down. His spurs gave one sound, then stopped. Deputy Ward stood aside, brim low. He looked at the horizon, not at men. "Go slow," he said, not loud. "The road's uneven." They went, across the porch, down the step, past the bent fence posts. On the road, boot marks spread like dark stains in milk. A crow circled high, no cry. I walked last, looked back. In the stall, dust still hung like smoke, unwilling to fade. Word ran quicker than stretcher. When the wagon brought the body to town, people already stood on porches, like posts set in ground. Their eyes drew a line across the main street. I heard the words unarmed before I saw the mouth that spoke them. At the smithy's porch, under the saloon eaves, on the church steps, he killed an unarmed man. The sentence rolled neat, like an old marble finding its groove. See a gun? Someone asked. No, another answered. His hand was empty. No one spoke of the gun lost in the dark corner between posts. No one spoke of the way the fire had burned in a man's eyes that instant. They spoke only of what could be spoken without proof. Ward walked before the coffin, not quick, not slow. Between the two lines of people, his boots left clean prints, his soles never touched mud. He told no one I had been there. He told no one the man was guilty or not. He carried silence like a faded badge. Ruth walked at the rear. She did not step close to Calder. She kept one arm's length, enough to hear his boots strike gravel. Inside her coat, her hand gripped the lighter, its lid dry, its edge bloodied last night, now rough as flint. Her eyes hollowed down, like one who had drunk a bitter draught yet could not lose the taste. At the crossroads, the wagon wheel caught a rut. A man pushed. Ward set one hand to the tailboard, gave weight. Calder did not step. He watched the wheel clear the rut, then turned away. A child asked, why had he no gun? His mother pulled him under the shade. Hush! They left the body in the small morgue by the creek. The door closed with an iron bar. Ward removed his glove, smoothed his brim once, dusted the sun. He turned to the carpenter. Seal it tight. The man nodded. No comfort, no blame, only a task. I leaned against the post of the post office porch. Sweat dried in my shirt, left salt white at the collar. People passed me. Their eyes brushed and moved on. At the saloon, glasses touched soft. The talk sank, then rose again as I went by. Afternoon press stopped where men gathered. The church steps, the bench by the store, the shaded wall of the smithy. He did not speak loud. He spoke just enough for one to hear, the next to guess. Calder once swore, he said, eyes on the ground. Swore he'd kill Briggs, back when men dug ditches for the flood. I heard it at the water bank. Truly? Someone asked. Ward did not nod, did not shake. He raised his brim half an inch. I tell only what my ear once held, he said. No more. The phrase once swore landed like a fly finding meat. It clung, bred more lines. So revenge. So he had waited. So the other had no gun, because he needed none. No one asked where the weak clink of metal in the stall had gone. No one looked to the dark crack where truth lay down. Calder bought salt at the store. The woman slid the sack across the counter like pushing debt. Her fingers did not touch his. $2, she said, eyes down. He laid the coins. The coins lay a beat, no one taking. Then she drew them, counted like raindrops in drought. At the saloon porch I heard a chair creak. A man said low, blood debt, paid in blood. The man across blew air over his glass rim. And her? Their shoulders lifted, fell. Someone laughed soft, not for the words, for something else, for being able to stand on a side without stepping. I met Boyd behind the mill. He sat on the wooden bank edge, legs swinging, eyes on the low stream. He picked a reed stalk, broke it joint by joint. Each joint he dropped in the water. The stalk floated, snagged on stone, stuck. He looked up when he saw me, said nothing. I asked, "There, what did you see?" He raised 2 fingers, rubbed them, then cupped his hand as if to hold something small. I nodded, he nodded back. Done. Noon slid into evening. In the long shadow of the church, men walked slower, as if to keep light from spilling. Ward sat a while on the step, hat on his knee. An old man came, asked low, "Will you do anything?" Ward looked past his shoulder into the gap between houses. "I do my part," he said. "The rest, men will do." Evening, Calder went home. He passed the well, men stepped aside to leave water room. A little girl with a bucket peered past her mother. The mother pushed her head down with 2 fingers, pressed as if flattening a sheet on a table. Calder did not stop. He looked only at the ground between his boots. Each step fell in the same beat, unbroken. Ruth sat on the porch. The axe stood ready. The chopping block rose to her knee, its face pitted with old cuts. She said, blade met wood, made a sure sound. The logs split, the halves fell like 2 sentences broken before spoken. He chopped with even measure, not fast, not slow. Sweat came on his temple, mixed with dust, marked a white line. "What's for food?" I asked, leaning on the post. No one answered. Ruth carried a small pan of water, set it down. When the 7th piece split, she lifted 1/2, stacked it. Her fingers bore a fresh blister. The cloth wrapping showed a darkening damp. "You can stop," she said the first time. Her voice no longer hoarse from the run, but flat and dry. Calder stopped. He rested the axe haft on ground, his other hand on the head. "Not yet," he said. One word. I looked across the road. A door shut just enough to hide a pair of eyes, pulling back into dark. At the saloon porch, a man lit a cigarette, a red spark against the draining dusk. He drew short, blew smoke through teeth. Smoke gone, their talk rose again like thin froth. Unarmed. One swore. Blood for blood. Ward passed. He did not go inside. He stopped 3 beats before Calder's porch, looked at the new wood pile, looked at the axe edge. His eyes slid to Ruth's bandaged hand, lingered a moment on her coat pocket's slight bulge. He said enough for 3 to hear. "They'll come asking tomorrow. No threat, no promise, a notice." "What will you say?" I asked. Ward looked at me as at a crack in brick. "I'll tell the path," he said. "What men choose to read there, theirs." He went. His shadow stretched, then broke across a wide patch of light. Ruth sat on the step. She pulled a thread from her hem, tied it back. Her fingers shook a little at the joints. She opened her mouth, as if to say more, then shut it. The wind turned, carrying the smell of crushed weeds. Calder set down the axe, sat beside her, did not touch, their shoulders a hand's width apart. He set his hat on his knee, looked straight. On the road, through the dust, Boyd came. He carried a bundle of sticks, walked in the way one learns by watching. He stopped before them, laid the wood down without sound. His eyes stopped on Ruth's pocket for one quick beat, then moved. Ruth nodded, not a smile. Boyd nodded back, turned, like a postman finished. "Stay or go?" I asked Ruth, foolish, like asking if rain would come. She tilted her head, looked at the ground between her boots. "Stay," she said, one word, for no one, to no one. The turn lay there, flagless. She stayed, beside a man just called Avenger. Past the porch, angled a little aside, enough to keep from stepping on Calder's shadow. Inside Ruth's coat, the lighter kept still. It was not drawn. It needed no word. It weighed like a lead ingot, cast of things men will not admit before others. On the lid the dry stain wore down with her motion, a faint line. She knew, I knew, no one else need. Night would come. They would tell more lines, pour more glasses, raise more witness, made in their minds. Tomorrow, Ward was right. They would come asking, but tonight, at this porch, there was only wood, axe, sweat, and two who sat beside without names pinned. Beside them, a silent child who had brought wood, learning to walk, so dust made no sound. I said no more. I leaned on the post, rubbed the salt mart from my collar with 4 fingers. The white flake crumbled like ash. Calder lifted the axe. Ruth set another log. Stroke to stroke. On the threshold, a brown moth perched, wings shut, unfearing the axe. Down the road, the last door closed its slit, light as a period set on an unfinished line. Morning, not yet hot, yet dust hung, would not fall. Along the fence, running the pitted field, one post rose to my chest, its head split 3 ways like a fishtail. Barbed wire looped round, 2 twists gone ashen gray. I laid a hand on the weathered grain, felt dry as old salt. Ruth stood beside, silent. She drew from her coat the small thing I knew, the old brass lighter. Lid tight shut, its rim marked with a thin black-brown line like burnt crust, the dried blood from last night, bitten into metal. "Here," she said, not looking at me. One word. She hooked the hinge into a loose strand from the wire twist. Metal touched, a faint high note, like a gnat in still water. The lighter hung, brass face toward the road, lid to the field. The wind not strong, only enough to sway it a fraction. The dry stain on the lid, specked with dust, stayed. Ruth did not clean it. She touched her finger to the cold edge, pressed once. Light, like driving a nail meant to be pulled, then let go. Calder stood 2 posts away. He watched, as if checking a joint. No knob hangs. The woman squints, raises her hand as if to shield from the sun or to touch. Her fingers halt in midair, tremble, then drop. She glances at the men. They avoid her eyes like avoiding a mirror no one wants. They move on, leather sandals dragging dust into a thin smear. No one touches. No one dares. "Will it do, hung like that?" I ask, not sure to whom. Ruth hears. She looks down through the fence line at the sparse grass, where a few dry thorns lie like unread words. "It will," she repeats, "for whoever needs to read." She says, read the way one says, avoid. Calder shoulders the hammer, walks the line, tightening loose nails. Each strike shifts the post, wood dust falling like chalk rain. He does not look at the hanging thing anymore, but his strokes slow when he passes that spot, as if the hand recalls a hard measure. Boyd follows, handing nails. His lips part slightly, no sound leaves. His thumb is grimy, a fresh cut showing. He grips the nails firm, passes at the right moment, pulls back at the right place. Dust begins to toy. In a light breeze, fine dust rises on the path like smoke. It drifts across the brass, hides the shine a moment, then breaks toward the grass. I watch the object vanish in that haze, swallowed, then return, dimmer. A neighbor's boy passes, his eyes on it, his hand in his mother's. "What is that?" he asks. She tugs gently, does not answer. Her steps quicken by one beat. A hay cart rattles over gravel. The driver stares ahead, his neck stiff, refusing a side glance. On the saddle, a rope slips loose by an inch. He does not retie. He drives on, leaves the rope for the wind. All day, passers-by see the hanging thing as one sees a sleeping beast. Do not poke, do not wake. They leave it, the way one leaves a story turned to stone. If someone asks, "What do we say?" I ask. Calder sets the hammer by his boot, lifts his gaze over road, dust, the backs of those shrinking down the distance. "Say it as it is," he answers. "A hanging thing." He adds no more. Beside him, Ruth smooths a strip of cloth at her hem, knots a thread that had come loose. She does it slow, like measuring time with 2 fingers. Noon folds in. Fence shadow isn't. Its 4 hoof strikes a dry knock. Ward lifts 2 fingers to the brim, not a greeting, only to clear sight of the way. He rides on. Hoofprints leave an even beat in gravel. His coat does not brush the fence. His boot heel does not kick the hanging thing. The horse sweat fades down the road. Only dust stays in the sun. A man of few words, I say, half to myself. Ruth does not answer. She lifts the wooden bucket, carries it to the well. The crank shrieks once. Water in the pail ripples 2 rings, then stills, showing a shard of sky fractured by wood slats. Boyd runs after with 2 belts of tin pails, each knocking his knees. We work in silence. Calder adjusts the stall hinge, twist, test, twist again. Ruth spreads hay in even layers, pours water, wipes the trough with a short rag. Boyd collects fallen nails into a tin box, each drop ting-ting like rain on a lid. Each of us keeps a small circle, moving slow, not cutting into the others. Axe, hammer, water, bucket, hay, fusing into a sound no louder than wind. "Eat," I say, laying dry bread on the step. Calder breaks a piece, places it in Ruth's palm. She does not say thank you. She holds the bread like a small order. They eat standing, chew slow, eyes elsewhere. Bread hard, needing spit. They drink last, 1 sip each, not drained. A crow lands 4 posts from the hanging thing. It tilts its head, watching, does not hop nearer. It knows where to feed. After a pause, it flies, leaving a black feather snagged in barbed wire. The wind toys with it, cannot free. Evening tucks in behind the sunline. Dust swirls again, thicker, thinning to spider silk between posts. Fewer passers now. One man halts far off, tightening rope on his cart. He looks once more at the thing, then ties an extra knot. A knot bound to nothing, but his hands need work. "Tomorrow, I'll mend that stretch," Calder says, pointing with his chin at the crooked fence. Ruth answers. She twists the bandage at her wrist, tightens, lets go. No more blood seeps. The old stain has hardened into crust. She tucks the end in, hides the knot, so it won't slip when she grips a pail. I stepped back half a pace to get a full view. The lighter lay there, unlit, unmoving like a dry, blind eye. On its brass surface the stain no longer red, but dark as old ink. The sun began to angle, caught it for a dim second, then left. The fence post accepted the new object the way it accepts a scar. No question, no telling. No one dared. "Is it all right to hang it like that?" I asked, not sure to whom. Ruth heard. She looked down at the sparse grass past the fence line, where a few dry thorns lay like unread letters. "It is," she repeated, "for whoever needs to read." She said read, the way people say avoid. Calder carried the hammer, walked the line, tightened loose nails. Each strike made the post quiver, wood dust fell like chalk rain. He no longer looked at the hanging thing, but his rhythm slowed when passing there as though his hand remembered a hard part. Boyd followed, passing nails, his lips parted. No sound came. His thumb blackened with dirt, fresh scratches cut across. He held the nails firm, offered at the right moment, drew back at the right place. Dust began to play. In a light gust, fine powder rose like smoke along the path. It drifted across the brass face, hid it a moment, then thinned toward the grass bank. I saw the object vanish in the haze for a heartbeat swallowed, then show again, dimmer. A neighbor's boy passed with his mother, eyes fixed on it, hand in hers. "What is that?" he asked. She tugged gently, gave no answer. Her steps quickened one beat. A hay wagon clattered by, wheels grinding gravel. The driver stared ahead, neck stiff as if refusing to glance. On the load, a rope slipped an inch loose. He did not tie it back. He went on, leaving slack for the wind to play with. All day, passers-by looked at the hanging thing as at a sleeping beast, not poked, not woken. Left where it was, as men leave alone a story turned to stone. "If someone asks, what do we say?" I asked. Calder set the hammer by his boot, raised his head, eyes sweeping the road, the dust, the shrinking backs in the distance. "Say it plain," he answered, "a thing hanging." He said no more. Beside him, Ruth smoothed the torn edge of her sleeve, tied the loose thread. She worked slow, counting time with her fingers. Noon pulled in on itself. The fence shadow stretched half across the path. Dust clung to my collar like a gray salt stripe. I rubbed it off with 3 fingers. Sweat beaded at my temple like rain pooling on tin. From afar, the armor sound of a horse rattled. I knew who it was before seeing. Ward rode past. Gray horse, cropped mane. He did not pat it, did not hiss a word. He sat upright, left hand holding the rein just enough, hat brim pulled low, shadow across half his face. Reaching the fence where the thing hung, the horse slowed on its own. Ward did not urge. He looked straight. His eyes fixed neither on the brass, nor on us, nor on death. They rested in between, where the wind passed like a man with gloves on. He did not speak, did not nod. The horse snorted once, ears twitching from field to road, searching a sound that wasn't there. A hoof struck the ground. His boot heel struck no object. The horse's sweat scent faded after a stretch, only dust hanging in the sun. "A man of few words," I said, half to myself. Ruth did not answer. She lifted a wooden bucket, carried it to the well. The pulley shrieked a thin note. Water in the bucket rippled twice, then stilled, holding a scrap of sky broken by boards. Boyd ran after, 2 pails banging his knees. We worked in silence. Calder adjusted the stall hinge. Twist, test, twist again. Ruth spread hay in an even layer, poured water into the trough, wiped its edge with a short rag. Boyd gathered, dropped nails into a tin box. Each one fell with a ting, ting, like rain on a can lid. Each made a small orbit, circling slow, never cutting into another's. The sounds, axe, hammer, water, pail, hay, knit into one tone, no louder than the wind. "Eat," I said, laying a dry loaf on the step. Calder broke a corner, set it in Ruth's palm. She did not say thanks. She held her portion like a small command. They ate standing, chewing slow, eyes not meeting. The bread, stiff, chewing, took work. They drank last, each a sip, none drained. A crow landed on a post 4 down from the hanging thing. It tilted its head, stared, did not hop nearer. It knew where not to eat. After a while, it flew, leaving one black feather snagged on the barbed twist. Wind teased it, could not loose it. Evening slid into the edge of light. Dust passed again, thicker, then thinned like spider silk between posts. Fewer walked the road. One man halted far off, tightened rope on his wagon. He looked once more at the hanging thing, then tied an extra knot. That knot bound to nothing near, but his hand needed the work. "Tomorrow I fix that stretch," Calder said, nodding his chin toward the sagging section. "Yeah," Ruth replied. She twisted her bandage, tightened, let go. Blood no longer seeped. The old dark patch dried into crust. She tucked the edge in, hid the seam, fixed it not to slip when lifting pails. Boyd dragged the empty tub across the yard, its bottom carving pale circles over old ones. He stopped under the fence shadow, lifted his eyes at the hanging thing again. He pinched 2 fingers in a hook, held it up, repeating the morning gesture. He froze a few seconds, then let go. On the post, the brass lighter kept still, unlit. The dry mark on the lid deepened under fine dust. At times it flared faintly when a shard of sun broke cloud, then died. I thought of a fire never stoked yet, with coals still alive. I did not say it. No one said it. Word. Enough. At the field's rim, a rough bush bent in wind, leaves silvered, crickets rasped. The mare in the stall breathed steady. Water in the trough stilled. No hand touched the lighter again. It stood like a period set outside the sentence, slowing all who read past. I sat on the porch step, back against the post, sweat in my shirt turned to salt. Dust grained my palm. I rubbed, left faint streaks on the plank. Boyd stacked the nail box in the corner. Ruth hung the wet cloth on a rod. 3 drips fell, then ceased. Calder leaned the hammer, rinsed his hands with a scoop, not scrubbing, leaving pale brown lines at his wrist. When night folded between the cracks of wood, we did not bolt doors early, did not latch early, did not say words for easier sleep. On the fence the object hung still. It did not retell the night before. It did not beg pardon. It did not threaten. It did one thing. Stood, cold. A warning nailed for whoever came after. Whoever read, understood. Whoever did not, the wind would tell with dust. And in the middle of it, we kept working, stitching the day's small tears, renaming no one, asking no one to believe, leaving only one silent object, and passing it, slow. At the end, only the brass lighter remained on the fence post, unlit, the dry mark on its lid like an unfinished sentence. It reminded that sometimes what keeps us upright is not the oath, but the price paid quietly. Calder, Ruth, Boyd kept working as if tomorrow asked no witness. The wind passed, dust veiled the brass, then fell again. So do we, pass through each other's lives, leaving a quiet sign for whoever comes later to read. If you have a brass lighter of your own, a small thing heavy as memory, silent as ethics, try naming it. Perhaps in a moment it helps you choose to stand on the side of being human, not the side of ease. You may share your thought beneath this video, or keep it. Here, healing makes no noise. It is a small act, repeated, asking no thanks. Like the way they left the object on the fence, a cold reminder, enough to slow whoever understands.